My name is Ethan Parker, and the strangest thing that ever happened to me in an Airbnb happened during what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend in Big Bear, California. I was 29 at the time, and after working almost 3 straight months without taking a real break, I decided to rent a small house in the mountains for 2 nights. I wasn't looking for anything fancy. I just wanted somewhere quiet where I could disconnect, make some food, watch movies, and maybe spend a little time hiking. The Airbnb looked perfect in the pictures. It was a 2-story wooden house surrounded by pine trees, with a long driveway, a small deck, and almost no neighbors visible from the property. The listing said, "Entire home, completely private." The host's name was Mark, and he had dozens of positive reviews, so I didn't think twice about booking it. I arrived Friday evening just before sunset. By the time I unpacked my car, the sky had turned completely dark, and the trees around the house looked like one giant wall. Inside, everything seemed normal. There was a kitchen downstairs, a living room, a bathroom, and a staircase leading to the second floor. I carried my bags upstairs because the bedroom was up there, and I remember noticing that one of the upstairs doors was locked. I assumed it was a storage room, so I didn't care. Around 10:30 that night, I made dinner, poured myself a beer, and sat on the couch watching a movie. Nothing felt unusual. Then, sometime around midnight, I got up to close the curtains because I could see my own reflection in the glass. That's when I noticed the upstairs window. From where I was standing downstairs, I could see a small portion of it through the open stairwell. There was something dark behind the curtain. At first I thought it was just a shadow. Then the curtain moved slightly, and I saw the outline of a person standing behind it. I froze. The figure was upstairs, completely motionless, facing the window. I remember thinking, okay, that's probably my reflection somehow. I walked closer to the stairs and looked again. The person was still there, tall, completely still. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, even though I knew it wouldn't help from downstairs. The moment the light hit the staircase, the figure disappeared. I immediately ran upstairs. My bedroom was empty. The hallway was empty. I checked the bathroom, then the other room. Nothing. The locked door was still locked. I actually laughed at myself because I felt stupid. I figured I'd been tired and had mistaken a coat or hanging jacket for a person. So I went back downstairs and tried to forget about it. About 20 minutes later, I heard a soft sound from upstairs. It sounded like someone walking across the floor. One step, then another. I muted the TV. Another step. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. I called the host. He answered after a few rings, and I asked him if anyone else was staying at the property. He immediately said no. I told him I thought I'd seen someone upstairs. There was a long pause before he said, "Ethan, you're the only person who's supposed to be there." Then he asked me something that made my stomach drop. He said, "Did you go into the locked room?" I told him no. He said, "Good, don't open it." I asked why. He wouldn't explain. Instead, he told me he would come by in the morning and check everything. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the living room lights on and sat with my car keys in my hand. Around 2:17 a.m., I heard 3 slow knocks from upstairs. I didn't move. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you something." Before I could reply, another message came through. "The upstairs room isn't part of the rental." I stared at the screen. Then I heard the sound of the locked doorknob turning, slowly, once, twice, then the hallway went silent. I grabbed my jacket and walked outside without looking upstairs. I spent the rest of the night sitting inside my car at the end of the driveway. At sunrise, Mark arrived with another man. They went inside for about 10 minutes. When they came back out, Mark apologized and said the previous owner had stored personal belongings in the locked room, and that there was no reason anyone should have been upstairs. I didn't argue. I just asked for my money back and left. A week later, Mark sent me a message saying he had checked the property and found nothing unusual. I never told him about the upstairs window again. But there was one thing I didn't mention. When I was sitting in my car before sunrise, I looked back at the house one last time. The upstairs window was illuminated by a faint yellow light, and behind the curtain I could see the same person standing there, watching me drive away. My name is Ryan Mitchell, and I still don't like staying in Airbnb houses after what happened to me in Lake Arrowhead, California. I was 32, traveling alone for work, and I needed a place to stay for 3 nights while I finished a project near San Bernardino. I found a 2-story house listed as an entire private home. The pictures showed a beautiful living room, a modern kitchen, 2 bedrooms upstairs, and a huge window overlooking the forest. The price was surprisingly cheap, but the reviews were good, so I booked it. When I arrived around 8 p.m., it was already dark. The house looked exactly like the pictures, except the woods around it were much denser than they appeared online. I unlocked the front door, walked inside, and immediately noticed how quiet it was, not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear every little sound the house makes. I carried my bags upstairs and chose the bedroom at the end of the hallway. The other bedroom door was closed. I didn't think anything of it. Around 11 p.m., I was lying in bed watching videos on my phone when I heard footsteps downstairs. I assumed it was the heating system or something falling over, so I ignored it. Then I heard the kitchen cabinet close. I sat up. I listened for a few seconds. Nothing. I went downstairs and checked the kitchen. Everything looked normal. I locked the front door again and went back upstairs. About 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps above me. That didn't make sense because I was already upstairs. The footsteps seemed to be coming from the other bedroom. Slow footsteps, back and forth. I stood outside my bedroom door and stared at the hallway. The door to the other bedroom was still closed. I called the host. He didn't answer. I texted him, "Is anyone else staying here?" A few minutes later he replied, "No, you're the only guest." I asked if there was an attic or another entrance. He said no. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe pipes, maybe the house settling. I went back to bed. At exactly 1:46 a.m., my bedroom door slowly opened about 2 inches. I hadn't touched it. I stared at the gap, waiting for someone to appear. Nothing happened. I got out of bed and checked the hallway. Empty. I checked the other bedroom. Empty. The windows were locked. The closet was empty. I started feeling ridiculous. I went downstairs and decided I was going to sleep on the couch. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen earlier. There was a second set of shoes underneath the staircase. Men's shoes, old work boots. I knew they weren't mine. I immediately called the host again. This time he answered. I asked him about the shoes. He went completely silent. Then he said, "Ryan, are you sure you're alone?" I said, "That's what I'm asking you." He told me to leave the house and wait in my car. I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my wallet and keys and walked outside. As soon as I reached the driveway, my phone buzzed. It was the host. "Do not go back inside." I stood beside my car staring at the house. Then I noticed the upstairs window. A man was standing behind it. He wasn't moving. He was simply watching me. I called 911 and told the dispatcher there might be someone inside the property. While I was waiting, the man disappeared from the window. A few minutes later, police arrived and searched the house. They didn't find anyone. No broken windows, no forced doors, nothing. But one officer found something strange upstairs. The locked bedroom door I'd noticed earlier wasn't actually locked. It had been blocked from the inside by a heavy dresser. Behind that dresser was a small access panel leading into the wall space between the rooms. The officer opened it and found an old maintenance passage running behind part of the house. It wasn't large, but someone could crawl through it. They also found a blanket, empty water bottles, food wrappers, and a flashlight inside. Someone had apparently been using the space. The police couldn't tell me who. I checked into a hotel that night and never returned to the Airbnb. The host refunded my entire stay and eventually removed the property from the platform. But the part that still bothers me happened 3 days later. I received one final message from the host. He said police had reviewed the exterior cameras and noticed something they'd missed during the search. At 1:41 a.m., 5 minutes before my bedroom door opened, a person could be seen walking from the woods toward the house. The person entered through a small maintenance door on the side of the property, and according to the camera footage, they had already been inside the house for almost an hour before I ever realized someone was there. I still think about that every time I rent a place. Because the scariest part wasn't seeing someone in the upstairs window. It was realizing that when I first arrived, I thought I was walking into an empty house. I wasn't. Someone had already been there, watching me unpack.